In this section, we're going to talk about what to eat during exercise. This is a biggie. This is a real biggie. What are you going to eat during exercise? And there's a lot of really good articles in this area and on this topic. You know, when you talk about during exercise, we're really going to be focusing on carbohydrate during exercise and how best to get that in. Here's just one really good. I don't know if you guys have heard of this fella, Asker Jugendrup. Very good researcher in the area of carbohydrate intake during exercise. Lots of good articles out there. But in general, what I'm going to provide for you are guidelines that you can use for your athletes and for your clients. So during exercise, again, remember, if your exercise is 30 minutes or less, really not a big deal. Even an hour or less, not a big deal to take in, carbohydrate. We'll look at this in just a second in a table. But, really focused in events that last 90 minutes or more. And that could be a strength and power sport like football, like, basketball games and, soccer games and those things that take a while to complete, even baseball a little bit, But the difference, like I said, is during these events, you've got half times, you've got timeouts, you've got plenty of time to consume food and fluid, during the activity. It's a little more difficult when you're in an endurance event and you're having to eat on the fly. But the general recommendation is 30 to 90 grams of carbohydrate every hour. And this could be in the form of liquid. It could be in the form of semi-solids or solids. A semi-solid is just one of those gels, right? One of those sports gels that you've probably seen at your local Walmart or sports store, GNC. Or solids work too for some individuals. Let's focus on the carbohydrate here and the timing of the event. So if your event lasts less than an hour, then the amount of carbohydrate you really need is really minimal or none. And so the recommendation is even up to 30 grams an hour. You don't really need more than that. And they've even shown, and you may have heard this, maybe you haven't, something called mouth rinsing. Right? Mouth rinsing is where, just what it sounds like, you take the sports drink, you put it in your mouth, swish it around, and you spit it out. You don't necessarily consume the drink. And something about the oral receptors in your mouth send feedback to your brain that improves performance in these higher intensity activities that last less than an hour. So there's something to this. It's only been out there, this research has only been out there a couple of years now, but more and more research is coming out on this. It's interesting, but the bottom line is you really don't need a whole lot of carbohydrate. And if you're going, this is a standard recommendation here, if you're going for 1 to 2 hours, you need small to moderate amounts, anywhere from 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour. And again, we're looking at glucose here. The reason 60 grams is that you can only oxidize or use about 1 gram of carbohydrate per minute. So that's about 60 grams per hour. And a lot of us will be participating in these types of sports and activities. And now if you're going over 2 hours, this is where you get into the large to moderate amount. This is even a little different than what you saw on the other slide. Here they're giving you a big range, 40 to even 110 grams of carbohydrate per hour. Because one of the things that research of late has shown is that there's more than one transporter. We know that we can take 60 grams of glucose per hour, but we can also then use fructose. Fructose has a different transporter. What you would like to do is be able to consume as much fructose in there as you could as well. So you use these multiple transporters, and instead of 60 grams an hour, maybe you're able to go up to 90 grams an hour. You get 30 grams of fructose. A lot of the sports drinks are getting into these blends, and you can look on the side of the label and see, this glucose fructose blend, because there are different transporters. So there's something to this, but you've got to find out what works for you, because fructose, if you take it in too much, it's going to cause you some GI distress for sure. So be careful with that, but just realize that's kind of what's taking place in the sports drink industry right now, is using these blends where they're adding in fructose. And I wanted to show you this slide because it's important to note why, sports drinks are so popular. Obviously, they've got as we've mentioned before, they've got the fluids for hydration, they've got the electrolytes, but they also have the simple carbohydrates. And look, this is how quickly the carbohydrate in these sports drinks will empty from the stomach. So percent of the meal in the stomach, we're both at 100%. So you choose the cheeseburger, the protein meal, or you just do the straight Gatorade. And within 30 minutes, 60% of it's already gone out of the stomach. In an hour, almost all of it's gone out of the stomach. If you look at eating your big protein meal, your big burger, look at this. 30 minutes after, everything's still there, 100%. An hour, you still almost got 80% there. Hour and a half, 50% of that is still sitting in your stomach. Right? This is why you don't want to eat this big protein meal. Although I'll say that there are people that I've known, crazy people doing these Ironman events that'll fuel their activity on McDonald's cheeseburgers. I'm not making that up. Again, mainly this is on the bike though, not on the run. On the bike, you can actually, because there's not as much jostling, you can handle more solid foods. For me, I would do on the bike, I've done some things like Rice Krispie treats and peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, something like that. Never cheeseburgers though. And if you are working with someone and you're just getting started, one of the best things that you could probably recommend for them is just to start with a sports drink. That's going to be the easiest thing that you can do. And it doesn't have to be Gatorade. There are plenty of other versions out there, or you can make your own. I just I'm doing a blog, and I just wrote on the blog how to make your own, sports drink, DIY sports drink. You can do it. It's pretty simple to do. Making sure that this is, because it's just going to be easier for your stomach to tolerate these types of fluids instead of eating solid meals. And the next step would be going to some kind of gel during activity, right? And this is really mainly more for endurance sports than the strength and power sports, because they're working really hard, but only for a short period of time. So they could probably do things like, and endurance athletes do also things like fruits like bananas and oranges and some of those things. I've seen NFL players on the sidelines eating bars, so that can work. You got to, again, the biggest thing is to figure out what's going to work for you and your athletes. I've even done, these are some of the things I've done. Yep, the Rice Krispie treats, but a big secret is the Pop-Tarts. And again, some people that are, whole food junkies, they might not like this, but Pop-Tarts work for me. You think about this, there are 200 calories in one Pop-Tart, and they're all sugar. It's all sugar. So I would it's perfect for the back of your jersey pocket on the bike, and just pull one out and eat it. I have done sport nutrition talks where some of these Ironman competitors, I had one guy admit that he used 32 packets of gel or goo during an event, and that's all he ate. Like, we've got to have a talk, man. You need to have some variety in the foods that you're consuming during your activity. That can get expensive. That's one of the reasons I like to go to the Pop-Tarts or something like a Rice Krispie treat, because these are less expensive. And, for me, I'm shooting for about 300 calories an hour. Everybody's a little different. If you're bigger, you may be shooting for more in an endurance event. You have a plan. I start out and say, I'm going to do the first hour on the bike. I'm going to eat a Rice Krispie treat and have 8 ounces of Gatorade, and then the next one I'm going to take 2 goos and some water. So I'm varying it up throughout the day. The same thing should be the case for strength and power sports. Oftentimes though, they just eat as they get hungry, and oftentimes they won't get that hungry during a football game because it's only going to last a couple hours. We're talking about a marathon or something, and really endurance event that anything over, like I said, an hour and a half, 2 hours is going to require. Definitely going to require you to really focus on calorie intake. And majority of that, you're going to focus on carbohydrate instead of a lot of fat or a lot of protein. So let's just give you an example of the grams of carbohydrate in certain products. A quart of Gatorade, 60 grams, 1 power bar around 50, a couple of goos, that's two goos have 25 grams each. That's 200 calories. There's our banana. Fig Newtons are another one. Little calorie bomb. Again, the biggest thing is that you are fueling in these longer events, these longer duration activities. That's one of the biggest mistakes I see in training with athletes is they don't eat or drink during these long training sessions. And later in the event, they start to fatigue, or later in their training session, they start to run out of gas. And, part of it's because they haven't eaten. And like I said before, the biggest thing is to go in with some type of plan. If you don't have a plan, you're going to be flying by the seat of your pants, and it's going to be an issue at some point or other down the road. No question about it. And once you do have that plan, you want to make sure you stick with it and you execute. I've seen too often with athletes, particularly in like these endurance events, where you've got aid stations, you got these people holding up the cups, for them to take so you can drink out of them. Because they're holding them right in your face, you take more than you need, and you end up sloshing around and getting a full belly and just not feeling well. So these are some of the things and considerations for carbohydrate and for calorie intake, what to eat during exercise. The biggest thing I suggest is that you figure out what's going to work for you. And, I've talked about, the first place to start would be liquids and then progress from there. And, the more jostling that you're doing, like with the running, the less solid you're going to be able to handle. That's where you want to stick with a gel or a liquid. But, if you're doing a strength and power sport activity, you might be able to handle solid foods. If you're at the gym lifting weights, you might be able to handle some solid food, and that would be fine. Again, the biggest thing is to find out what's going to work for you. All right, with that, we'll finish this up, and we'll jump into what to do post-exercise in our next section.